Welcome to the Living Unoffended podcast with your host, Brant Hansen.
Got an email. It is so heartbreaking, and I've gotten a few of these over the last year or so, and I'm sure it applies to many more people than just people who are emailing me about this, but I wanted to share this in a reaction that I have because I was asked for how I would counsel somebody in this situation. And so I want to talk about that, and we're going to do that next. And also, as a bonus, hopefully it's a bonus, I'm going to read a chapter out of a book called The Truth About Us, which is my least selling book of all time. Thank you. Thank you. It came out in April of 2020, and you may remember there was some stuff going on, and so I'd like to blame that for the fact that this book hasn't sold as well as the other ones. I actually think it's good, but it's about how we humans rationalize to try to make ourselves feel like good people, and how life is so much better if you can skip past that and you don't have to do that. You don't have to defend yourself anymore. Like it's all about that. And I think it's kind of entertaining because I think that there's a lot of like social setting, like studies they've done on people. And I always am entertained by that. Like, how do people react in this sort of situation? That gives away some of our cognitive biases and how we humans operate. And I just find that very entertaining. So anyway, that's coming up too. Want to remind you that we have a sponsor for this, and they're awesome. They actually support Cure, which is wonderful. They support our show. We're so grateful for that. But it's United Faith Mortgage. If you're thinking about getting a mortgage, can't recommend them enough. They're great to talk to. Even if you just have questions about mortgages, or like you're just starting the whole process, you don't know what's possible, or if something could work out, or you want their opinion, they're great. It's UnitedFaithMortgage.com. Ryan it's a small family operation, but again, they have huge resources because they're tied in with this bigger direct lender. So that gives them extra flexibility. So thanks for patronizing them. If you're thinking about a mortgage, UnitedFaithMortgage.com. I'm not going to mention any names or specifics here. I did get this heartbreaking email, and it's from a woman whose husband just walked out, and she's got kids. And she's already praying for her husband and this other woman. And I admire that a ton. I mean, just last week we were talking about singing like the song, The Blessing, over your enemies in your head. And she says she's been doing that, which I find amazing. But she asked like how I would counsel her about, she's really dealing with anger and she's trying to forgive. And my reaction is, and this has come up a couple times in different ways last week, actually, not that exact scenario, but another person asked me about, well, what if something horrible happens, and would you just say, hey, get over it, you can't be mad? No, there's a time and a place to say things. And when someone is going through something tragic, that's the time to sit with them. It doesn't make what I'm saying about forgiveness not true. It's still true. It's just like, I wouldn't sit down with somebody who just had this happen and say, okay, here's how you need to get over that. Like, no, if this is a friend, I'm hurting. I'm mourning with this person. Because you can say true things at the wrong time, right? In the wrong way. Job's friends said some things that are very true. It just didn't help. So in this case, honestly, I mean, this is kind of how I responded. I said, this is so heartbreaking to read. I'm so very deeply sorry. If this happened to a friend nearby, I'm not sure I would advise much of anything at this point. I think I just need to sit and be with my friend and mourn. The devastation is real, and your feelings as a result are completely understandable. It's true that, yes, as she put it, do the principles still apply? I'm sure. I said, yes, the principles still apply, of course, but there's such a thing as a truth spoken at the wrong time. I think of Job's friends who would have been better served just sitting with Job and lamenting. I must say how remarkable it is that you have responded the way you have by seeking the Lord's best for your husband and also this other woman. To me, that's evidence of God's power in your life. That's not a normal human reaction. and in the best way. The grace God gives us really is the power to live in a way that is supernatural. Parenthetically, I wrote, one thing I love thinking about a lot is how God is training us to reign with him. He wants us to prove ourselves trustworthy. Our present sufferings are quite real, but there really is that backdrop to the things that we experience in this life. Again, I'm just so very sorry. As I'm typing this, I'm asking the Lord to continue to surround you with his presence in myriad ways. One of the most compelling things about him to me is that he draws close to the brokenhearted. You mentioned reconciliation, and I don't know what that looks like or what that needs to look like in your case. May the Lord also give you immense insight and discernment with regard to your husband and how to handle this with your kids. Thank you for living out this way of life, the narrow way. I know you know this, but in the kingdom, it's those who mourn who will be comforted. The Lord promises justice, and he keeps track of your sorrows. He stores your tears in a bottle. He is your defender, and you lack nothing. May God bless you big time in the days ahead, I wrote. So yeah, when people talk about like toxic forgiveness or something, they instantly go into that corner where it's like, well, would you somebody's murder victim in the family, and you just tell them, oh, you have to forgive right now. Like, there's a time and a place to talk about this stuff. And there's also understanding that emotions, again, they're like the warning light on a dashboard, and it's telling you something horrible has gone wrong here. And that's valid. Absolutely valid. But for her, obviously, and she knows this, which I think is really cool. Like, she's already been doing some work. So she's handling this in a remarkable way. But obviously, we don't want to be saddled with this for the rest of our lives. And a lot of us have been through stuff that we could be saddled with it for the rest of our lives. We don't want that. That's enslavement. And the way of forgiveness is freedom. And the emotions are real. Got it. So, yeah, maybe you could pray for her too as you think about it. Okay, so got this book I want to read from, The Truth About Us. This is the chapter, and it's about how we rationalize and justify and how that puts a lot of pressure on us, and it's so much lighter to just believe the truth about what God thinks about us. And I hope it's helpful. And you know what? I'm tacking it on here, so if you don't like it, you can shut it off. It's fine. Hopefully it's helpful and you like it. And if you want to get the audio book, I think it's like 50% off. I just saw on Amazon. I think it is on Audible or whatever. But if you don't, fine. This is free. Hopefully it's thoughtful and helpful in some way. Thank you for listening. As always, honored. So here we go. I will read this chapter to you. It's chapter 13, entitled 7 Billion Italian Stallions. Battling self-righteousness and the urge to justify. Here we go. Let's talk about evil people. I learned about evil people the usual way, the way most people do, and by that, I mean I learned by reading Russian dissident Alexander Solzhenitsyn, sure, but mostly by watching the show Chips. Now, Solzhenitsyn, through both his fiction and his writing about the Soviet Gulag, helped me understand that evil is something we all have to do battle with, but Chips, through both its awesome motorcycles and its cool cops, offered a stark counterpoint. There really are just plain evil people, and they are pretty obvious to spot. Their mustaches are different, they drive vans, they rub their hands together when they're making plans. These are all giveaways, plus they cackle with glee. That's when you know, too much glee, huge tip-off. At this point in my life, I'm leaning towards Solzhenitsyn's impression of humanity, though. If only it were all so simple, he wrote. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. End quote. We cartoonize evil in our pop culture to make it distinct from us. We want to believe bad people are obviously bad, and since I'm not obviously bad, I must be pretty good. The other day, I saw some ugly news on the Facebook page of a religious radio station. One of the on-air personalities had been arrested for abusing children. The comment thread was understandably full of shock and alarm. One comment, sure, we all sin, but there's a difference between sin and pure evil. Right. I may sin, but I'm not one of the bad guys. Sounds reasonable enough. Problem, that Jesus in Scripture doesn't ever tolerate that approach. He hates it. I can't find a single instance in the Bible of Jesus approving of someone thinking they're morally superior to anyone else. Not one. Whenever anyone tries it, he turns the tables on them. When the upstanding people pick up stones and throw at an adulteress, he defends her and challenges their own supposed goodness. He doesn't allow them to use comparisons to kid themselves about who they are. Notice, too, how when real-life people don't fit the obviously evil profile in our heads and they do something horrific, we tend to say, wow, they must have just snapped, as though a seemingly inexplicable crime must be the result of a random synaptic breakdown. We don't just snap, a longtime professor of psychiatry told me. We like to tell ourselves other people snap to avoid the reality that they made decisions, and incremental decisions add up over time. He told me this as I was interviewing him after a local news story about a mom who had stabbed and killed her son. Murders happen fairly often in our city, but this story was causing massive discussion and worry. Why? This particular mom had a doctorate. She was well-to-do, informed, and part of all the right causes locally. High-status associates jumped to defend her character after the murder because, while the act was despicable, she couldn't be an evil person. Her resume showed as much. She was like them. So it must have been something out of her control, right? No. Quoting the psychiatrist here, other moms do not need to worry that they're just going to snap and attack their children, the professor said. The truth is, there's a backstory to this, a lead up to this. We are always becoming something, even if it's not obvious to others on the outside, he said. Sure enough, as we learn more about the story, he was right. There had been warning signs over the years, but her public goodness, her outward appearance, allowed them to go tragically unchecked. It's good news that we don't snap. The bad news is that our character, if we seem externally like good people, can become horribly disfigured without us or anyone else realizing it. Those of us who don't murder anyone may still be darkly embittered, selfish, and hateful inside without knowing it. Jesus keeps alerting us to this. He's after our hearts, not a publicly clean rap sheet. Quote, "You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'You shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment.' But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment." That's Matthew 5:21-22. Then he does it again with another of the 10 Commandments, the one about adultery. So you haven't actually committed adultery? Great. But it doesn't make you a good person. Quote, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery,' but I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." Verses 27 and 28. This should be a death blow to our, "at least I'm not like one of those evil people" stories, but our self-stories have a daunting power over us. My friend Sherry says, we all think we're Rocky. We all think we're the hero underdog. I think she's onto something. In Rocky terms, all of us see ourselves running in Philadelphia, raising our arms to the sky, taking on the world. We're the ones scratching and clawing to heroically make our way through life against all odds. Others try to get in our way, but we will fight the good fight somehow, some way. There we are, all of us en masse, climbing the stairs at the art museum in our sweats. All of us jogging in place, looking out over the cold city. All of us hearing the music. We're all going to fly now. But you'll notice, absolutely nobody sees himself as the evil opponent. Russian boxer Ivan Drago. Me? I'm the bad guy with all the advantages. I'm hooked up to these awesome advanced machines while I run on this treadmill because I want to destroy the feel-good story of the year. That's me. I get all the breaks. Here's a major problem with this, beyond the fact that there just can't be 7 billion Italian stallions. This self-concept allows us to justify anything in the service of our heroic stories. No matter what we do, we can come up with a defense. I'm the hero, the good guy, you know? As we've seen, our justifications are custom-made and ingenious. They have to be because they're constructed to fool ourselves. As Guy Swanson writes in Ego Defenses and the Legitimization of Behavior, The defenses are, quote, so designed that the defender, not just other people, can accept them, end quote. I'm guessing Darren Armstrong would agree with that. He spoke to a writer for Vice.com about how he used to attack people and rob them and how he justified all of it in his mind. He says he felt the system had let me down, and besides, he told himself, he was fighting for fairness. He'd see someone and ask, why should they have nice stuff when I've got nothing? In the same article, other criminals detail the ways they convinced themselves they were in the right. A man jailed for attempted murder and who now works as an addictions counselor says he, quote, justified my wrongdoing to everyone, including myself. Another man justified his years of crime by putting himself in the role of the hero, an underdog, making his way through a difficult world by being successful and skilled at what he did to people. Quote, my justifications involved blaming corrupt politicians, police, and society. Paul, writing in Romans, says there's only one real justification for sinners like me. Big relief. Someone else provided it. And it's all we need. Here's the quote of the scripture in Romans. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement through the shedding of his blood to be received by faith. He did this to demonstrate his righteousness because in his forbearance, he had left the sins committed beforehand unpunished. He did it to demonstrate his righteousness at the present time so as to be just and the one who justifies those who have faith in Jesus. Honestly, that scripture is something I've had to read several times. It's confusing at first, at least to me. But if I believe it to be true, I don't need to play the justify myself game anymore. I can know I'm valuable without having to prove my goodness. I don't rewrite reality to fit myself into the role of Rocky, the good guy. I get to be less defensive. I don't need to concoct any more cover stories to fool others or myself. The pressure's off. I have a friend who's a counselor, and he told me about some of his clients who are athletes. They have the yips, he says. Apparently, there's a phenomenon where they can have a mental block, and what was once routine becomes incredibly difficult. A pro golfer suddenly can't putt straight. A second baseman can't throw to first base. A basketball player airballs his free throws. Insightfully, I asked, so what? After all, I've made something of a lifestyle of airballing free throws. It's kind of a signature move. He replied, yeah, but you're terrible. This guy was a 4-star recruit known for being a pure shooter. So what's going on when they suddenly can't do basic things? I asked. He said, the bottom line, it's too much pressure. It becomes bigger than a free throw. There's more at stake than there needs to be. It's like, if I don't perform well, I've got no identity. I have no reason for my existence. I have no justification. At some level, they feel like life is hanging in the balance and they have to prove to someone that they really matter. And then everything and everyone becomes a threat. The crowd, the announcers, the coaches, everybody. So I feel like my job, I'm quoting my friend here, I feel like my job is to help people realize they don't really need to be successful at this in order to have an identity or be loved. It makes a kind of weird sense. If everything's riding on this thing I'm doing, the yips are understandable. There's just so very much at stake. Speaking of athletes and fighters and such, I just watched an interview with John Jones, who's a UFC champion. He was talking with the interviewer, Joe Rogan, about taking criticism for his personal life. Jones said, everybody feels like they have the right to tell me to get my stuff together, but you know how many bad people there are in the world? So many people into some crazy stuff. I'm changing some of the words here to make it rated G. Rogan says, yeah, but you can't compare yourself to the losers of the losers. I know what you're talking about. Like you can say, hey, like compared to dudes who like to blah, 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 I'm fine. Jones, exactly. Who knows what weird stuff this guy's in? And he's telling me to get my stuff together. But just because my stuff is public doesn't mean you're better than I am. Rogan, that's true. But you know what? That conflict is never ending and you can't get involved in it. That conflict that you're starting up in your brain right now, it's a rationalization conflict. You start rationalizing your behavior versus, well, a lot of other people do worse. A lot of other people, well, that's a dead end. That's a bad road that a lot of people go down to make themselves feel better. Jones says, right there. Rogan, the only thing that can make you feel better is to be pure or to be clean. Because if someone comes up to me and says, hey man, you've been ripping off old ladies and stealing money from the church, I'd be like, what the heck are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. It's not true at all. So if someone says something to you that's rude, that it's not true, it doesn't have any impact on you. But if someone says something that's rude and true, then you have to rationalize. You have to be like, well, what about you, man? What's going on with your life? Maybe you are into some dark stuff, you know? That's a bad road. It's a defensive road. But it's a trap, man. It's a trap. End of interview part. Exactly, it's a trap. And Rogan actually makes a brilliant point. Still, I'd argue we're in trouble if we have to be pure on the basis of our own goodness. What about when we're actually guilty of things we can't undo? That's all of us. How do we start over? And what if the voice making the accusations about you is you? What if you're the one who's brutal on yourself? What if you are overrun with regret and it's based on failings that are very real? I'm asking for a friend here, of course. Honestly, this is something I've struggled with my entire life. I can obsess over my failures, like how I blew this opportunity or that one, how I forgot to return that email, or how I've let people down. Something dumb or unfair or hurtful I said 10 years ago can suddenly pop into my memory, and it feels like a punch to the gut. Maybe you can relate to this, or maybe you'll think I'm a weirdo, or maybe both, which is perfectly reasonable. It's remarkable how I can vacillate from self-incrimination to self-righteousness. Maybe I don't even vacillate. Maybe it's simultaneous. Like the self-incrimination and self-righteousness feed each other. As we've seen, there are a lot of options for how to deal with this guilt. We can compare ourselves with worse people, change our fundamental belief systems to fit what we're doing, blame others, become more fervently moralistic in other areas, rationalize and justify. But another option is to actually believe God really did forgive me and that what happened on the cross really did matter. If God, who knows me and my motives better than I know myself, has elected to forgive me, and if I'm really going to submit to him, then I have to forgive myself too. What he did to cover my sin has to matter. His opinion of me has to outweigh mine.
You've been listening to the Living Unoffended podcast with Brant Hansen. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And if you'd like more information on Brant Hansen, his book Unoffendable, and more, go to branthansen.com.